We're back for another episode of the Stephanie Gaitley Show after a week off, and we're, of course, joined by head coach Stephanie Gaitley. I'm Raf Elia. We're going to take you looking forward to the WNIT, which Fordham just got a bid into last night. But first, we're going to take you back to the A10 Tournament. Last episode was right before that. Since then, it was a win against Rhode Island at home, and then a loss to St. Joe's in the first game in the opening round in Richmond. So let's go through that first. Going there, I asked you if it was a different experience all in all, because not just from you're in a neutral site, but you're staying at a hotel for a couple of days. Everyone's at the hotel. It's a whole different atmosphere. It's a championship, a tournament atmosphere. Was that an effect on the team, especially a young team?
No, I don't think so. I mean, I think being on the road in general and the things we've done this season have prepared us for that. I mean, I'm not a fan of our format. You know, I've been very vocal about that, just because I think if you're going to have all teams in, let's be at one site. I'm not a fan of the home game, just because I don't think it's an atmosphere for a tournament. But you know, we did what we needed to do. We beat Rhode Island after a tough loss at home against St. Joe's and lost that bye. And then we had to face a really hot St. Joe's team that was playing really well.
So first, looking at that tournament as a whole, it was GW taking home the Atlantic 10 championship, beating that St. Joe's team. So I guess a surprising championship matchup when you shape it out. Dayton not in it, St. Louis getting beaten. But you said it from the very get-go that this is a tournament anyone can win. And now you have 6-7 teams in the postseason from the Atlantic 10. So how does that show the strength of the A10?
I mean, it shows the parity. I mean, if half your conference is in postseason, it just shows that it's a pretty aggressive, top of the conference, and anybody can beat anybody, as evidenced by GW taking home the championship. And GW had to go through a tough route. I mean, they had to beat George Mason for a third time, and I think George Mason was really, really good this year. And then they had to beat the top seed Dayton, and then they had to beat St. Joe's, who was playing really, really well, and they had just played them, a week before as well. So. I give them a lot of credit, and like I said, now postseason is, what it is. It's a way of saying you've had a great year, and I'm really proud of this team for the accomplishments.
How surprising was the Dayton elimination when they got – because, again, it was anybody's tournament, but Dayton obviously was the favorite to go on and, take it or at least go on to the championship. So was that as surprising as maybe it was for an outsider?
No. I wasn't surprised, just because, I mean, Dayton's obviously a very good team, but, GW has gotten healthy. When we played them early, they didn't have their big kid. We didn't have Mary, but their big kid was sixth player of the year, and it is the tough matchup because she can shoot the three, and she's got great size, and so she can pass as well. So I think they got healthy at the right time, and so they became dangerous, and so it didn't surprise me at all that they went all the way and won it.
I want to put a bow on the St. Joe's game because there are some things I want to talk about, positives from the tournament as we move into the WNIT. But first and foremost, it was 1 for 9 from 3 for St. Joe's, and that one was the dagger from the corner. Take us through that play, because you said it at the beginning of the game. If there's a look late in that game or just late in the clock, that's what they're going for. They're going to drive Woods in, and they're going to try to kick it out to someone open on the corner. They hadn't made a 3-all game. She hadn't made a 3-all game in particular, and that's the look that they got. That's the look they gave to you. You were ready for it. That's what happened, and it came down to that shot.
That's the one as a coach you got to live with, because, once we had lost at home with Woods going one-on-one against G, we said if it happened again, and we worked on it, I was going to go zone, and we were going to double it, and we were going to make them make a skip pass. And that's our philosophy in defense anyway, is to skip pass 3. You made them make a shot they hadn't made all game, and that's, as a coach, what you want to do.
When that ball gets into her hands, what are the thoughts from you on the sideline? Is it, okay, good, let's see what happens, and then just put your hands up when it goes in?
The passer or the shooter?
When it goes into the shooter's hands.
I didn't look. I'll be honest. I looked away, and I go, and something. I wait to hear what the crowd does, and the crowd start cheering, so I figured it went in. I just figured, once it took me a few days to even relook at the tape and revisit the scenario. But once I did, I actually felt that we defended it pretty well, and it was a shot that you have to live with.
And it was a good pass from Woods
It's
to
a great
just get
pass.
it through
It's a great
traffic to
pass,
get to the
yeah.
corner in general.
She had great awareness. She did a great job finding the open person.
In that game, just in general, it was a pretty commanding first half. Toward the end of that first half, it seemed like St. Joe's went on a little bit of a run, but still a solid first half defensively from the team. Field goal percentage was down. 3-point field goal percentage was an advantage for you guys that entire game pretty much, though all shots came pretty low, evident by the score line in the end. Same as the St. Joe's game back at home. Aside, I'm assuming that if you were to revisit that last play the way it turned out, you'd defend it the same way and leave it up to that shot. But in general, throughout the game, was there a spot where you felt that the game got out of your hands at all?
When we got foul trouble, when G and Joey got in foul trouble, I thought there were some really, really questionable calls. I was not happy by the officiating, especially when you're told at the end on a very critical call that they made the wrong call. It would have been our ball with 26 seconds. Mary got totally pushed off, and when you're told that they made the wrong call and it would have been our ball, it changes the whole game. And I thought they let a lot go in the post. I thought they pushed G around a lot, and then I thought, Joey's fouls were minimal at best. And so that changed it because they were big, and we didn't have bench. I mean, Haley's out with a concussion, and we have 2 guards and 2 freshmen in Kendall and Zara. So I think that was the change for us.
So that game over with, the team got to the Atlantic 10 tournament in Richmond. It's a young team. That's been the storyline all season. What are the positives from that? And then the positives as well is now they're playing in the postseason, and it is a young team.
I mean, every year takes on its own identity. Like I serve on the All-American committee, to pick the 10 best players in the country. And, there's a kid up from Oregon, and she's a sophomore. And a lot of times some of the questions goes, if it's close, does it go to the senior? But you never know if that sophomore's going to have that same year as a junior. So, every year is its own identity. So it's just really important to make the most of every year. And I mean, I know I've had teams that have been young, and you keep thinking, all right, you're young, you're going to get back because you were young and you accomplished it. That's not always the case. So for us, I thought we maximized everything out of this team. I thought we got everything we could out of this team. I was proud of that. I'm really proud of where we are right now. I'm proud of the postseason bid. I just felt that this team I don't want to say overachieve because that wouldn't be fair to them, even though that might be the way you might look at it.
Yeah.
But definitely with our out-of-conference schedule, with the injuries and some of the adversity we faced during the season, I just feel we did a great job stepping up to the plate.
2 players obviously recognized postseason in Jamaris Davis, Bree Kavanaugh. Not really a surprise with the 2 names we saw. The awards, however, I thought, I don't know if you were as surprised as a lot of people were, or at least looking back at Jamaris Davis, the Defensive Player of the Year, looking back at her as a freshman coming up and obviously all the things that you've worked on with her. Was it surprising when you got the notice that she was going to be the Defensive Player of the Year?
Yeah, because I was honest with G. I told her midway through the year, I don't know if I'm going to put you up with it because you're not consistent. You got to prove to me that you're going to be consistent. And even as far as late as when we played at Dayton, and I thought G really wasn't a solid contributor defensively. And then we came back and played at Duquesne. I thought she did a terrific job. So I felt that she was up and down with it, but I felt that she deserved the opportunity to let somebody else make that decision. And, I'm really happy for her and proud of her for getting that award. Bree, it's just strange to me that you're 2nd team all-conference, but you're not Rookie of the Year, and the Rookie of the Year is 3rd team all-conference. Strange, but again, great acknowledgement of 2 kids that are very talented that had a lot to do with our success this year.
I was going to ask you about that Kavanaugh, about the situation with Kavanaugh, because, yeah, it was interesting. She's 2nd team all-conference, not the Rookie of the Year. The Rookie of the Year, Nicole Cardano-Hillary, who is 3rd team all-conference, but as you said, I'm glad you mentioned it because I was going to.
Yeah.
Jamaris Davis, obviously 1st team all-conference again, all-defensive team, and the Defensive Player of the Year. Statistics for defense are rough to go with, and a lot of the coaches end up just going with the eye test. So what's the eye test factor that gave Jamaris that award?
I mean, it's a great point you make, Ruff, because for so many years, I felt Sam Clark, the only reason we won games that one year when Sam was a senior was because of her in the middle, because she had a great IQ of basketball. And, I had to really, really sell for her to get on that all-defensive team, and we're the #1 team in the conference. And I think, G, you're right, passes that eye test. I think with the steals, with her defensive rebounding. Plus, there was a couple kids that weren't nominated that was a little surprising to me because I thought they could have been in the picture for the defensive player of the year. But every coach has a different opinion of who their go-to defensive player is, and that's not right or wrong or for me to judge that. So for me, I definitely agree with you that I think she passed the eye test and it had a lot to do with her getting that.
And then my last question is going to be on Bree. What was the now having to look at it from outside and accepting what it is? She's not the rookie of the year, but she is second team all conference. What was the barrier that got her to second team all conference, but not quite to rookie of the year?
I'd like somebody to tell me. I don't know. The way the voting goes, you pick your top 15 in order from 1 through 15. And then with the way it goes for player of the year, you have a list of kids that are nominated from each team, and then you pick your top 2. So obviously, the kid from George Mason got more votes than Bree, but yet Bree got more. He got ranked higher within. So it doesn't make a lot of sense to me. So I'd never try to figure that out, just because sometimes I scratch my head at those things.
Well, we're going to be talking to Jamaris Davis, the Defensive Player of the Year in the Atlantic 10, coming up along with Johanna Klug in our On the Court segment. We'll bring back Coach later on to talk about the WNIT coming up later on this week. We're now joined by the Defensive Player of the Year in the Atlantic 10 in Jamaris Davis, as we mentioned back in that segment with Coach Gaitley. We're also joined by freshman Johanna Klug. Teams coming up to the WNIT this coming Friday. First of all, from a freshman's perspective, are you excited for that first postseason?
Yes, definitely. Like the first postseason, it's really exciting and it's going to be a good game. Yes.
And obviously, G, you were there last season. How excited are you that you get to keep playing basketball? Obviously, your senior year, and you get another game at the Rose Hill Gym.
I'm super excited. Every time I think, oh, this is my last home game, something happens and I get another one. And it's a really great feeling because 2 years ago, we got to feel the feeling of not being in postseason, and it sucked terribly. So, I'm just glad that although we didn't win the A10 like, we hoped to, the season isn't over yet, and there's so much more basketball to play. There's still another championship to play for, so I'm still excited about that.
Well, let's put a quick bow on that A10 championship. Obviously, the win against Rhode Island, going against St. Joseph's in a surprising A10 tournament that ended up having St. Joseph's go to the finals. No Dayton. It was St. Joe's, GW ends up winning it. So looking at it from that perspective, after Dayton, first of all, got eliminated, was it a little more upsetting that you guys weren't in there knowing that they would not have been in your way had you gotten past St. Joe's?
Of course, but first of all, it really hurt that we again lost against St. Joe's. But I think, we keep working now, working hard. So we got like our chance now on Friday again.
Same kind of response to that. Yeah, obviously
Same
just
here.
upset that St. Joe's
It was just
is
the
a
whole
loss.
loss to St. Joe's. We couldn't even think about Dayton being out of it. It just sucked that, we had that opportunity right there in front of us. And once again, it just kind of slipped through our fingers.
Well, the positives from that are you're the Defensive Player of the Year, G, and as well as all defensive team, as well as first team all conference again. How much does that Defensive Player of the Year, though, mean? Because I know we've been talking to Coach for a while now about how she knew that you could get there defensively. You were there offensively for a while, but she always knew that you had that potential to be all defensive. You had the all-defensive team, and she was happy when you got there. So now you're the best defender in the Atlantic 10, and you have the award to show it. What does that mean?
Oh, man. I was so shocked to even get the award. It was not even a real thought in my mind because I didn't do the things that I did defensively for recognition. I just did it because that was the type of player I am, and I knew that that was what our team needed. So when she told me that I won Defensive Player of the Year, I was like literally jaw dropped. I was so shocked. Oh, my God, I couldn't believe it. But, it meant a lot, like a whole lot to me. Because the little things that people might not notice, like taking charges, diving on loose balls, being in help for your teammates, little things that you don't get stats for, to have that recognized, it was just, a really big deal for me.
And then obviously as a freshman you get to experience A10 Tournament, which is a different animal altogether because you're in a hotel for a couple days before it, neutral site. all the teams are in the same hotel, and it's just a different atmosphere, and you have the pressure of having to play Richmond Coliseum. How beneficial was it that you got to experience that first year, and hopefully you get to experience it now 3 years going on?
I think it was great. Like it's a great atmosphere, like all teams together, and I think it's not like a lot pressure. It's more like excitement to play and to see other teams play before you, and then you can go on the court and play. It's like it was really cool.
And one of the best things Coach said about this WNIT coming up is that it's different from the regular season because at the end of a loss at the end of the regular season, you still get to play in the A10 championship. A loss in the A10 championship, and you guys had a good season, means you still get the bid to the WNIT. But a loss in the WNIT means that's it. For you, G, that means that's it collegiately. And for you, Joey, that means that it's done until next season. So is that pressure? Is that excitement? What do you guys view that as?
I don't know. I think of course it's a bittersweet moment for me. Just knowing that no matter what we do at the end of this WNIT run, like that's going to be the end of my college career. But I'm just excited to see how far the team will make it. We've had a bunch of really good practices leading up to finding out who we play. We've had a good practice today. So there's a lot of good things leading up into this tournament that I'm really, really excited about. So it's pretty bittersweet for me.
Same thing, Joey, but you do get another season next year, presumably with Fordham and beyond that. So is it still the pressure of just having now an off season looking ahead of you, or is you could feel a little more relaxed because obviously you don't have that to deal with?
Yeah, I think it's like G said, really exciting, and coach always says that there will only be like two teams finishing their seasons with a win. So we just want to go in the game and play our like best what we can do, so that we can say after the game we did all we can do, and that's it.
Last season was different when you got to the WNIT. Ended up beating Georgetown on the road, but then losing to Penn State rather handily. This season you played Penn State early on in the year, and maybe when the team wasn't even at its peak, and you still almost had that game and probably should have had that game. Is that a different feeling this year, this WNIT, more positive feeling, more thinking that you could possibly beat out all 63?
Yeah, because it's a completely different team than we had last year. Like we had a good season last year, but you can just tell the atmosphere surrounding this team is completely different. So I'm always excited going into games with this group, and tournaments, whatever we do, I'm always excited. Not saying that I wasn't before, but the energy, the commitment, the whole atmosphere is just completely different.
And I'm sure that it'll add some sweet to the bittersweet moment if that final game in a Fordham Rams uniform ends with hoisting a trophy, right?
Of course, of course.
And we'll be rooting for you guys. We want this season to keep going on. We're glad it keeps going on here at the Rose Hill Gym on Friday. And G, I mean, I said it last time we had you on. Not sure if it's going to be the last time we have you on, because obviously you keep doing things and are available also. But you keep doing things that warrant you coming back on. But obviously if we don't have you back on, end of the WNIT, we wish you the best of luck with anything moving forward professionally beyond that.
Thank you so much.
And now we're going to bring back Coach Gaitley and look ahead to the WNIT. Fordham got a bid and got to host, so we're not done with basketball just yet. We're not done with basketball in the Bronx just yet. This Friday at 7 o'clock, it's Fordham against Harvard for a chance to move on to round number 2. Fordham last year got a chance to move on to round number 2, but that one was on the road against Georgetown, a game where you trailed at the half, and it seemed like they had a pretty comfortable lead, and then it just went away very quickly in the second half, a chance to go on to Penn State, who beat you handily last season, but then didn't beat you as handily this season. Is there a different feel going into the WNIT this year?
Yeah, I think the kids are hungry. I mean, I think they're excited to have a home game. They're not familiar yet with Harvard either, as the coaches are. I mean, we started to break it down a little bit in practice today, but we're getting more familiar. And then once they have tape, they'll get obviously more familiar with it. I mean, Kathy Delaney-Smith has been there a long time. She's legendary at Harvard, has been the coach there 36 seasons. So they have a great history of success. And to be in the WNAT, again, there's how many teams, less than 1/3 of the teams still playing. So I tell the kids all the time, like, it is an honor. It's not an entitlement. We got chosen because of our body of work for the season. So, our goal right now is not only represent Fordham, but we're also representing the Atlantic 10. So we're going into this trying to go as far as we can.
What's the level of competition like in the WNIT? Because it's not going to be the NCAA, but you have now the cream of the crop that didn't make the NCAA. We already said 5 Atlantic 10 teams, so 5 of the better teams in the Atlantic 10 that you would have had to go up against to win the A10 championship are all going to be in this 64 team field. So what's the competition like?
It's a high level. I mean, there's no easy game. Like you have, like we talked about before, you have the automatic qualifiers that come by virtue of you're not winning your conference if you were the regular season champ. And so, every one of these teams, whether you're a regular season champ or you were second in your conference, you're all solid teams. So there is no easy game. So details are important. 50-50 balls are important. Making foul shots are important. So it comes down to really valuing each and every possession on both ends.
Was there something from the NIT? You've obviously been to the NIT a good amount of times, and most recently last season. What do you take from those experiences? What's the biggest thing that before you had gone to an NIT that you didn't know that now you know, and you take that experience with you onto Friday and beyond, hopefully?
It's the one and done feel of knowing that, at the end of regular season, you still have your conference tournament. And if you've had a good enough season, you're going to go to postseason. But once you're in postseason, it's like going to play pickup, and if you lose, you're sitting for 3 hours. Like, if you lose, you're sitting, you're done, And so it's that feel of it's really 40 minutes of locked-in focus and 40 minutes of Fordham basketball. So that's the thing, like the kids, the margin of error is less. You can't afford the margin of error because everybody's good. We fortunately have a couple days to prepare for Harvard, and I think we're better when we have more time to prepare. Some teams don't have it. They have a quick turnaround. Like St. Joe's has to go to Seton Hall and play tomorrow. So sometimes it's good, sometimes it's bad. For us, it would be good if somebody's playing us because we run a lot of sets, so it's hard to kind of get the kids to understand all those sets in a short window. But I feel we do a good job preparing our kids. So I feel, we'll be well prepared for that game, and I think it's exciting to be able to play at home. And it's ironic that I'm not one to look past the next round, but I was laughing because I was like, oh, geez, the second round, Drexel, like two of my best friends in coaching, that Drexel, Robert Morris, and I've been talking them through their loss recently to Elon. I'm thinking, oh, how ironic is that?
So for the pressure that you're going to face now with the one and done for the team, the young team, is that beneficial? Because last season, obviously, that was in effect during that Georgetown game where obviously they did not want to go home just yet, and that was obviously on the mind. With a team this young, would you rather them stay loose like it was the A10 championship and then you're probably going to get a bid regardless? Or is this the pressure that there's a long off season ahead of you if you don't play the 40 minutes? Is that a positive?
I think with a young team, you got to stay loose. I just think, I found with this group, they're not a high-pressure group. They're not a group that you can be, like when you have older kids, you can challenge and demand, like with Lauren and Mary and G. But with the younger kids, they take things personally because they're young and they don't know any better. So I think it's probably error on the side of just staying loose and staying positive.
5 A10 teams selected to the NIT. What does that show about the A10 and obviously about you as a team because you faced that was your conference?
It's exciting. I mean, to think that we're in postseason for the 5th time in 7 years, knowing how when we took this program over, where Fordham was. So to be able to say, I mean, it's one thing if you go to postseason for 1 year and you're that flash in the pan, so to speak. But when you're a consistent program and consistently in postseason, it says you built a program. And I think a lot of the programs that are, like, St. Louis has been there with Kemp, and Duquesne's been there, St. Joe's has been there. Obviously, this is new for George Mason, and Dayton's obviously been there, and GW's been there. So, it's new territory for like a George Mason, but for us, that's our standards. That's our, we want to get to the point where we get passing it to the NCAA, but I will never lose sight of how important it is to be in postseason. And, you have somebody like Rutgers who turns a bid down because their expectations were to be in the NCAA tournament. And, everybody has a different way think about a month ago, they were one of the top 16 seeds in the tournament. So kind of get where she's coming from, but at the same time, it's an opportunity to keep playing. It's an opportunity to win a championship, especially with our young kids and coming off a foreign tour and being able to grow and build the program and put another banner up. That's huge because it just speaks volumes, and it helps in recruiting, helps in everything as far as maintaining the success of the program.
Now looking to the team that you play, the Harvard Crimson, only have played 4 games against them total, and I believe you have only played against them once back in 2013, a win back here at the Bronx, and you had to, I'm assuming, prepare for a game last season because they were in the Holiday Classic, so I'm assuming you've got some kind of familiarity with them, and then obviously you looked at tape late last night, early this morning. So how has their program shifted, I guess, from the last time you've played them? If the program shifted, obviously it's a different team, but where's their program at? What's their identity?
They're a little bit younger. I mean, they're very much a transition team. They get out and transition. They're a very unselfish group. They play well together. They move the ball well. They play very, very hard. It's a team that there's certain identities on it that are similar to a lot of the teams that we've played, but kind of all mixed together. So we're not going to see anything that we haven't seen. I'm confident that we'll be prepared and that we'll be able to it'll be a dogfight, and that's why in a dogfight you got to realize the little things make a huge difference. And so it doesn't matter, sometimes people look at the last shot and that dictates the game, but sometimes the game is lost in the middle of the game. And so for us, it's important to understand that it's got to be a 40-minute effort.
And then my last question is going to be, that game's going to take place about 2 weeks exactly since that game in the A10 tournament against St. Joe's. So it would be a couple weeks since your team has actually stepped foot on the court to play a competitive game. What have you been working on since that A10 championship? With the knowledge, I'm assuming, that you had the WNIT bid. What was the work like during that break that you ended the season, you weren't too happy with this aspect, you're trying to get to where you could possibly win the WNIT? What have you worked on most?
No, and that's a great question, just because that's a long time off. I mean, that's longer than any break that we've had. Like even at Christmas we played UCLA the 20th or 21st, and then we played again the 28th.
Yeah.
So the longest break we've had is a week. So we've brought in scout squad with officials yesterday, so we try to simulate as much as possible game-like situations. The next few days we'll bring scout squad back in and play like quarters to get them game-like ready. So we've tried to keep it fresh. We've tried to give them a couple days off just so that they are fresh. But when you get to this time of year, it's March Madness is such an exciting time. Like your adrenaline's high, and you're just operating on positive energy.
Well, Coach, thank you and good luck, and we hope to see some more basketball moving forward. Glad we get to see some more basketball at the Rose Hill Gym. And as always, thank you to head coach Stephanie Gaitley. That'll do it for this episode of the Stephanie Gaitley Show.
Davis on the break all the way. To say the word Pandora. It's a great first name, but she is now gone. Bree Kavanaugh is a name we'll be saying on this year, first season with the Rams.